I wish you God's blessings as we welcome you to another episode of Living Emmaus, a serialized program on the Holy Eucharist presented by Verbum TV. Dear friends, we also want to acknowledge the feedback that we get for this program. There's lots of interest shown among our faithful, among you viewers. So thank you very much for the feedback. It certainly helps us with taking this discussion forward, and we realize how much you have benefited from these discussions. And today, to enlighten us further, we have with us Reverend Father Cecil Joy Pereira, the director of Daham Sevana Seminary, Kalutara, and he was also the former director of Sacred Liturgy in the Archdiocese, and he is very experienced and knowledgeable about the subject. Welcome, Father Cecil Joy, to Living Emmaus.
Thank you very much once again.
Right. So, Father, we last episode we were talking about the Liturgy of the Word. We finished the Liturgy of the Word, an important part, a very important part of the whole Eucharist, because we are talking about living Emmaus, where the disciples, experienced a heart-burning experience. Exactly. Owing to that section, which we call the Liturgy of the Word. And I'm sure today our viewers know the meaning and the importance of the Liturgy of the Word when you next celebrate the Holy Eucharist. Don't take it lightly. But now let's move on. The Eucharist is much more richer and also adding to our deeper experience of the risen Lord in the breaking of bread. Yes, we are now going to discuss another new section of the Mass, and that is the Liturgy of the Eucharist. So I'm going to ask Father Cecil Joy. Father, can you just tell us about the structure of the Liturgy of the Eucharist, which is different from the Liturgy of the Word? It comes after. What is the structure, Father? And is there a historical development to this structure?
Certainly, yes. Certainly there is a lot of history. That's where we must be really proud of what we celebrate in our liturgy. We are not infants or kids or people who have begun very recently. Yeah. We have a lot of history. Now, coming to your question about the structure, we have finished the Liturgy of the Word. Yeah. So there is a preparatory stage. We call them the gathering rites, you remember? Yes. Then we have the Liturgy of the Word, the major part. Similarly, there is another preparatory stage, a kind of a, if you do a graph, it would be like this. Coming down, there is a preparatory stage that would be the preparation of the altar with the offertory procession. Yeah. Right? Then there is the next important segment, Liturgy of the Eucharist. Yes. And the Eucharistic prayer will be the major section of that. Yes. Right? Then you have the concluding rites. Right? With communion you have concluding rites, and that's how the structure goes. Right. Actually, in the 1970s there was a beautiful graph done to show the flow. It's like two mountains. Right? The two mountains are the Liturgy of the Word and the Liturgy of the Eucharist. Yeah. And lying low in the valley, here the preparatory stages. Gathering rites, then preparation of the altar. They are the valleys. They are the valleys. That's why we keep on telling, don't blow out of proportion these valleys. Valleys should not be made mountains. What happens is, valleys are made mountains and mountains are made valleys. Yeah.
We make mountain out of molehills, they say.
Exactly. And that's when we really miss the mystery part of the Eucharist. For example, if you blow out of proportion the penitential ritual, right? If I start by saying, my dear friends, today let's be truly repentant, truly contrite of heart. Let me begin with the first commandment, the second commandment, the third commandment, and I go on through the Decalogue.
It becomes a penitential service.
Penitential service. Of its own. And I would be taking about 20 minutes and then when I come to the liturgy of the word, I have no time.
No time.
So I rush through that. That's when we say you actually blow out of proportion the valley and make the mountain a valley. You deflate that, and then it's a kind of an anticlimax. It shouldn't be done.
Shouldn't be done.
It happens also with this.
Yeah.
We blow out of proportion the offertory procession.
Particularly during weddings, ceremonies and so on. Wedding masses
that becomes the the focus, the attraction.
or church feasts.
Church feasts, right? Then who comes, what they bring, and then when you come to the Eucharistic prayer, we rush through. See, exactly what we are talking about. You really blow out of proportion and make this valley, which shouldn't be highlighted and exaggerated too much, which must be a kind of a sober event and a moment. You make it a kind of a grand celebration, and after that, there is this anticlimax, deflation, which shouldn't happen. So the structure goes like that: preparation, liturgy of the word; preparation, liturgy of the Eucharist; then the missionary sending forth, right? It's not the conclusion of the Mass. You are sent forth. That's how the word missa comes. Mass. Missa means you are sent forth. Ite missa est is the Latin way of sending you away. Sending you away to say, okay, now everything is over, now do and start your holiday. No, we are sent as missionaries. Go and proclaim the good news.
Yeah.
So that is basically the structure. So here, now that we have finished talking about, discussing the liturgy of the word, now we start with the preparation of the altar, of which the offertory procession is an integral part.
Yeah.
So in order to break that little part up, so we have the offertory procession accompanied by the offertory hymn.
Yes.
Then we have the preparation of the altar with relevant prayers. We must discuss those prayers and what happens on the altar, at the altar, right? And it concludes with the prayer over the gifts.
Yes.
And the prayer over the gifts leads us to the Eucharistic prayer. That's how it goes. So, very briefly the structure. Now, you asked about the history as well.
Yes, Father.
Now, how do we celebrate without bread and wine? We can't.
Yes.
We can't. The book is already provided for the liturgy of the word. So, people don't bring books from home.
No.
Right? But bread and wine, my brothers and sisters, originally and for a long time were supplied by lay people.
Okay.
Lay people, right? Unleavened bread and wine from, the juice from wine without any other addition.
Juice or something.
Yeah, without any additions, right?
So there were no wafers as such at that time, is it?
No, that was unleavened bread at the
unleavened
beginning.
bread at the beginning.
And wine,
Yeah.
homemade
wine. Okay.
that they brought. In fact, there was a time in the history of the liturgical development, when Mass began with the offertory procession. People brought bread, people brought wine, people brought the first fruits
Of their harvest.
From their farms.
Right.
That was something done with a lot of love. In fact, up to a recent times we had now no first fruits on. We are trying to find some fruits now, right?
Yeah.
First fruits, our cultivation is not doing too well, right? And therefore, the Mass began with that because the offertory procession was so long. People kept bringing and bringing and bringing, and the celebrant accepted.
So every person who came to participate in the Mass bought these things.
Brought something.
So there was lots of bread and lots of wine.
Well, lots of bread, lots of wine. We will now discuss and say what happened to the excess wine.
Right. Yeah.
They were for the poor.
Poor. Yeah.
They were for the poor, and they were distributed among the poor.
Yes.
So what was taken for the Mass was separated, and the rest distributed among the poor. Actually, every participant was more or less obliged to bring something.
It's symbolic of their own offering.
Yeah,
of
it's
themselves.
actually more than being symbolic. It is our selfless love.
Charity.
Now we could say, okay, the rich people bring something.
Yeah.
The poor people don't bring something. No, that's not right. The best offerings are by people who do not have.
Yeah.
You give out of your nothingness. We give out of our nothingness. Take, for example, the widow of Zarephath, to whom Prophet Elijah was sent. We have this story in the book of Kings. Right? And she had nothing practically. She said, I came to gather some sticks so that I and my son may eat this and die.
One meal and that's it.
Yeah. Last meal, their last supper.
Yeah. Correct.
Right? They may eat and die, nothing else left. So this is our last meal. But we know the miracle. Right? And then we have the famous story of the widow's mite. Jesus was watching in the temple, and people came, they put a lot of money, but this poor lady came, she contributed all that she had. Out of her nothingness, she gave. Right? And St. Peter in Acts chapter 3, going up to the temple of Jerusalem, curing that man, he says, silver and gold I don't have, but what I have, I'll give you. So this is a kind of a spirituality and a theology developed about the offerings. The offerings. Now, before talking of the offertory procession itself, having spoken very briefly about the structure and the history, we must lay the foundation, which is a theological one.
Yeah.
Now, very often what we miss is this. We are told, bring something. So we bring something.
Right.
Right, and we are happy that we have brought something. Why do we bring that? What is the purpose of the offertory procession? And the purpose is actually seen from a theological perspective. So let me now very briefly tell you what the theology is, because our liturgy is theological. Liturgy is not just man-made and then what you and I like. These are very poor understanding of liturgy. What is the best gift that we can give? And what do we offer on the altar? Let's remember, it's Jesus Christ. The best offering is the bread and the wine. Nothing else. And finally, in the Eucharistic prayer, if you listen carefully, during the segment about offering, which comes after the words of institution, after the institution narrative, we very clearly say, Father, we offer up this body and blood of your Son, the acceptable sacrifice. Right? So it is actually not my kilo of sugar or your kilo of 400 grams of milk powder or my 500 grams of dal that becomes the chief offering. Right? The chief offering is always the body and the blood of the Son. The acceptable offering to the Father, because it is the Paschal mystery that we are celebrating. That is number one. Having said that, then we have to say, okay, why do we therefore bring offerings? Okay, that means number one, we have to bring bread and wine, because that is the main sacrifice, main offering. I have seen some offertory processions, very long queues lined up to offer
dry rations and lots of things.
And so on. Very good, but no bread and wine.
Bread and wine is probably in the sanctuary and brought by the altar
already
servers.
Brought by the altar server and then kept on the altar.
Which is not the right thing to do.
It's not the right thing.
Absolutely.
The original idea of bringing offerings was to bring bread and wine. So, any offertory procession must have bread and wine. Now, how do we bring bread and wine? Now, that also is a practical confusion. Yes. Sometimes they bring the chalice, sometimes they bring the ciborium, sometimes they bring cruets, sometimes they don't bring cruets but only wine. You have to bring bread and wine. So, the ciborium and the wine cruet.
Yeah, not the chalice.
Not the chalice.
Yeah, not
the chalice is empty.
Yeah.
Exactly. At that stage, the chalice is empty.
Correct.
So, it is the ciborium, and whenever possible, the bread be seen. It is the bread and the wine. Right? That is very important. It is not to be taken for granted. At last, at the end, we send these two people. Yeah. It is not that idea. That is actually the theological point of departure for an offertory procession.
Yeah.
And without the theological point of view, theological point of departure, we cannot talk of the organization of an offertory procession. Number two, these offerings are for the poor.
Right.
That is why when everybody brought, right, there was excess.
Yes.
And what happened? The excess was divided among the poor. Probably a man brought a loaf of bread, but he went back with 5 loaves of bread. Right? Probably he, being a deserving person, would have got some more.
Yeah.
Right? That is sharing among the poor. And that is where the deacon's role, the role of the deacon was important. The deacon had to go around, right, the countryside, visit homes, find out the needy people, the needs of the people. That is why the deacon is actually even today the minister, the ordinary minister of the prayers of the faithful.
Yeah.
He can pray for the needs of the local community. Right? So, that is the offerings are also meant as gifts for the poor, for the deserving people. Number 3, a part of it can be also for the maintenance of the pastors, of the priests. So, these 3 objectives actually flow out of the theological basis. And once we know this, then we know what to do and what not to do.
Exactly.
Okay? Now you can ask me any questions which are of a practical nature about the confusions. I have given you the theological background and the principles.
Yeah. And that happens often in the case of special occasions like weddings and so on. People keep bringing lots of things like flags and flowers and not wine, not the cruets, but bottles of wine,
milk, rice,
cakes,
and
the wedding cakes and so
wedding cakes, and then
what is
vegetables
the
and
fruits
and all nicely wrapped in glass paper and gold ribbons.
Yeah.
Right. Now, of course, our people must be catechized.
Yeah.
This is the whole problem. This is the whole problem. Our people must be catechized.
Since you are going to do that, as to tell us the meaning of it, I'd also like you to add who can bring the offertory.
Yes, definitely.
Can a person who is not a Catholic bring an offertory?
Okay, we will take one by one.
Yes.
First, what to bring.
What to bring?
What to bring is very, very clear. So, you bring bread and wine.
Yeah.
That is, of course, now hosts and wine are specially turned out in some religious communities for this purpose. We don't bake them at home anymore, right? It's done in special places. The wine is specially, produced for this. Otherwise, the wines, if we produce at home, could be rather strong, right? And the bread we bake at home could not be, maybe sometimes it's not presented in a manner that can be consumed easily. So, bread and wine we have to bring. Then gifts for the poor. Now, what are the gifts for the poor? Could be dry rations,
Yeah.
could be clothes,
Mm-hmm.
could be cash,
Mm-hmm.
right? Could be stationery for children,
Mm-hmm.
could be medicine and medical equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Like these days, let's
These
say
days,
maybe pulse oximeter or a thermometer or whatever it is. No, these are offerings so that you give it to people who are deserving.
Yeah.
Right. For example, we can have kind of objectives. Let's say this Christmas, we will have, let's say, a particular children's ward in a hospital.
Hmm.
Let's say Lady Ridgeway Hospital.
Yeah.
Or this Oisa maternity ward. So, all our faithful are now requested to bring things that they need.
Required.
We go prior to the date and then we have a discussion with the administration there and say, what do you need?
Could be toiletries also.
Could be.
Soaps.
Soap.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what they need.
Yeah. What they need. Yeah.
What they need is what we must provide.
Right.
Okay, so everyone brings and then we have a very meaningful kind of an offertory procession.
Bed sheets,
Yeah,
pillowcases,
very meaningful.
towels.
Yeah.
In a case like that.
Right. Now, without doing that, if we just bring, decorated items, I think this is where we fall short
Yeah.
of the expected objectives. Now, this happens, as you rightly said, especially at weddings.
Yes.
Right? We have a kind of a, performance.
Yeah.
It's more entertainment than sacrifice. Actually, it must be discreetly done.
Yeah. Here it's a show.
It's a show. And everyone looks behind to see who is coming in the procession and what they bring and how they walk. So, you cut a figure and then you distract the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right? And therefore, the theological objectives are totally lost. This shouldn't happen. Now, for example, you bring a tray with cake, wedding cake, fine. But is it to be distributed among the poor?
Yeah.
Now, that's the question. Right? Maybe the choir children and the altar servers can share a few later. Right? But whether it is a distribution among the poor, that has to be discussed.
Yeah.
You bring maybe 500 grams of brinjals and then some carrots and tomatoes. Can we distribute that among the poor? 5 tomatoes. Right? It's a kind of a show.
Yeah.
In that case, you will have to bring at least a few kilos, which is not practical. Okay. Very often you bring a nicely wrapped bottle, inside it could be anything, from coconut oil to even liquor, which shouldn't be brought, right? And God knows what is inside, people keep guessing,
Yeah.
right? And then, is it to be distributed among the poor? So, we must have a kind of a target.
Yeah.
Now, one of my very, I would say, challenging, touching experiences was when I was a parish priest in a particular parish. There was this boy and the girl from the same parish, well-to-do families, very, very good Catholics, and all the time in and out of the church, very helpful, very generous. So, they were going to get married and then there was a lot of preparation. The whole village was preparing because they were very lovable people. So, they came one day to discuss the wedding mass and said, "Father, what do you want us to bring?" I said, "What have you planned?" So they came up with this stereotype list of, okay, the bouquet of flowers by the page girl and so on. This, now kind of, you have a set pattern, no? And then the bridesmaid will bring milk rice, and the bridegroom will bring a bottle of this one, that, and they went on. I said, no, okay, let's do something really that you will remember for the rest of your life. These gifts are for the poor.
Right.
If I tell you something, will you bring that? He said, yes, Father, certainly. They thought it was a gift for me. Right? Very good people, yes. And I said, no. I know of a girl. She's, her family is not doing well. The father has no job and she has to get married. And she is very anxious, sad, because she has no money to buy even her wedding sari. I said, why don't you gift her a wedding sari? And they couldn't believe. For a moment there was this initial shock, like, huh, is that so? Yes, I said, yes, I am serious. Don't tell anyone. Both of you go. You sacrifice some part of the money that you have set aside, allocated for maybe your entertainment purposes, maybe for the party after that, maybe for the homecoming ceremony. But you must feel that. You must be hurt because you had to sacrifice that. Not out of your excess. And they were so pleased. And they went, and then without telling even their parents, they bought one of the best saris. And I said, don't tell anyone that you are bringing this, wrap it nicely.
Yeah.
Everyone would think that they are bringing maybe some bed sheets for the parish priest. It's okay. Or towels and bed sheets, or a cassock material for the parish priest. It's okay because it's wrapped, no one sees. So they brought it along with the ciborium. The boy had this parcel also. He gave it to me, and no one knew.
Okay.
It was very discreetly done, very quietly done. And I gave it to that girl in that parish who couldn't believe. For her, it was a miracle.
That's very touching.
Very touching. And the day she came wearing that sari, that's the real offering, no?
Right.
Later I told this couple, don't ask me who that girl is. But remember, somebody is happy because you have sacrificed. Because you have sacrificed. It is much better than that vegetable basket of vegetables you are bringing. Finally, it's good for nothing.
Right.
2 carrots and 5 tomatoes and some pineapple and something like that. Do something substantial. Do something that really hurts you finally. Give until it hurts. That's the theological, biblical purpose. Right. And be a cheerful giver. 2 Corinthians 12. Be a cheerful giver.
Right.
Then we begin to see, okay, if Jesus gave his whole body and blood to us, that's nothing for us to give something like this. See how much, Trevor, how much do we spend on weddings these days?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, it's unimaginable, no? If you put in figures, then you have your jaws dropping looking at the figure. You can't read sometimes the number of digits you have.
Yeah.
So much. And what is the value of the offertory procession? Maybe 3,000 rupees or 4,000 rupees. Is that the type of sacrifice we are going to make? Certainly no. Right. So our people, if they are catechized, actually they are ready to do that.
Right.
The trouble is we have a set pattern now. So everybody thinks this is the best way. So you only change the gold ribbon or the silver ribbon or the color of the ribbon or the glass paper or the basket that you are choosing, but the contents are the same. The contents are the same, and from a theological perspective, the contents are hopeless. That really doesn't actually fit for an offertory procession. In our history, our people brought the best that they could to offer from their harvest.
The harvest.
No? And they gave practically everything they had. Right. Nowadays, things are becoming a little better. Now, there was a time, you might remember, when people start bringing symbols.
Yeah.
And then someone explains the symbol also, which is ridiculous. You bring a stone and someone says something about the stone and the symbolism of the stone. Someone brings some milk and then you go on explaining the symbolism of milk and what, and then all kinds of funny philosophical and non-philosophical interpretations.
And non-theological.
No, certainly no. This is a drama. It's a drama.
Yeah.
Right. We are not actually looking for dramas.
So I think sometimes, Father, the reason behind it is they want to improvise. They are innovative. They want new ideas. This is what happens. I mean, motivates them to do things like this. But then, without a proper understanding or catechesis, as you said, they miss the bus.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. Now, I have been organizing many big liturgies
Yeah.
at the diocesan and national and even international levels, including the papal mass. We said very clearly, okay, bring gifts for this purpose.
Yeah.
For example, when one archbishop, when his installation came, his family members contacted me.
Yeah.
What do we bring, Father? So I called up a small meeting with them. I said that was the time during the ethnic war. I said, okay, there is a particular need in a camp somewhere, in a refugee camp.
Yeah.
You bring all that you can, right? Dry rations, clothing,
Clothes.
stationery, medical equipment for that camp.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah.
And we sent it to that camp. See, somebody benefits now. I normally don't talk about my personal things, but if you permit me, I'll share something very personal. You were there for my Silver Jubilee celebration
Yes.
at Kotte. And on my invitation itself, I said, bring cash,
Yeah.
right, to set up a scholarship fund for the poor children who study in this college where I studied, where my father taught.
Yeah.
And we set up a scholarship fund.
Fund.
And I'm still helping, every year I'm helping children from the interest I get.
Really.
That's, you know, see, something charitable must happen.
Yeah.
It's not that you make a show and then bring some decorated things and inside the contents are theologically, you know, hardly anything.
No.
Right? Let's stop bringing all these niceties, you know. If you want to bring, let's say, some milk, rice, and that can be brought separately, you know.
Yeah.
The parish priest and the visiting priest and maybe the choristers and the altar
the
servers
Mass.
can enjoy, yes. And that must be given enough, you know, we must give them enough. But that's not material for the offertory procession. I mean, it's also a kind of a, you know, an insult. You bring that in an offertory procession and then
And
you
give it to the priest.
give it to the priest and the people who have, it's not good.
You can give a gift to the priest after Mass or something.
That
or,
can be done
that's a
separately,
separate thing.
milk rice or cake or short eats, or you can bring separately, put it in the presbytery mission house so that they can enjoy, the choristers, the altar servers and the priests who come, they can enjoy later with a cup of tea.
Yeah.
You don't need to bring that in the offertory procession. Right. So let's be very sensitive to the needs of the times, to the needs of the people. Best thing is to discuss these things.
That's right.
Right. And then the people who bring, you brought up this question,
Yes.
the people who bring. At weddings, of course, you know, the bride's party, the groom's party, you know, the best man, and okay, but what they dress up, how they are dressed up.
Dressed up for.
Is sometimes, you know, and when they walk up, it's a kind of another entertainment, especially when they get these page boys and the flower girls to bring things. They can't, they shouldn't be made use of for this. It's exploitation actually. We discourage that. Of course, children of some, discretion, understanding can come. Sometimes these tiny thoughts come. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They don't know whom to give. There is a drama. There's a drama. Another very interesting incident happened to me. One flower girl came and she was led by somebody from behind. But when she came up to the sanctuary, she refused to give that to me.
All right.
She said, no, I won't give.
I won't give it.
Yes.
It's like the toys they hold on to.
Of course, they are children,
Yeah, they are
little children, no?
Absolutely.
And then the auntie was trying to say, it was a big drama, everybody laughing. So the whole solemnity of the celebration is gone.
Gone. And I mean,
it's gone.
Probably throughout the Mass thereafter you keep, giggling and, you don't focus.
You want to make use of this little one, his or her cuteness, to get some entertainment for yourself. Then you must do it somewhere else, not inside the church. Not inside the church, certainly no. Right? That brings me to the other question you posed, who can bring? Can non-Catholics?
Particularly in marriages, mixed marriages. And
mixed marriages, there is no offertory procession.
No offertory.
That's another question. That's another serious question.
Absolutely. We should talk about that, Father.
Yeah. Okay, first we'll come to this.
Yes.
Because bringing offerings in the procession is a baptismal rite of the Catholics.
Right.
When catechumens were trained, formed, catechized in the early church for 3 years, right? They stayed inside the church up to the prayers of the faithful and they were sent away. They could not participate in the prayers of the faithful. They could not participate in the offertory procession.
That's right.
On Holy Saturday night, when they were baptized, the first things they did were participate in the prayers of the faithful, bring offerings in the procession. So, offertory procession is not like some other, some religions where they have, take some things.
Offering
like
to the gods and
offered to some fruits and it's not that. This is very different. So, you can't just give a kind of something to some non-Catholic just to please that party. Or we invite some dignitary to sign, right, a non-Catholic, let's say, and that person comes to please him, can ask him to go in the procession, and that person, not knowing what he is supposed to do, will come. But that is not right. This cannot be done. It's only Catholics who can come up in an offertory procession. Now you also have this other question. In disparity of cult, it's called the disparity of cult.
Yes.
When a Catholic marries a non-Christian, not a Christian, non-Christian, it's called disparity of cult. There is no offertory procession.
There is no Mass either.
There is no Mass, no offertory procession. It's only the liturgy of the word and the wedding, the ceremony.
Nuptials. The nuptial ceremony.
That's all. That's all we have. So, in order to please our people and we camouflage things, which is actually, not right. So, sometimes we think as priests, okay, if I don't give this, well, they might get hurt. We are trying to please them, but we try to hurt God. Right? It's not a sacrament. Then there was this question once asked, so what about bringing it at the end? So if at the end they want to bring, let them bring it to the mission house.
Not as part of the liturgy.
Yeah, why do we want to camouflage and to please people? A liturgy is to glorify God and to sanctify people, not to glorify people and to isolate God. If at all we are doing that, what we are doing is we are insulting God and glorifying ourselves. If at all we are hurt, that's for our sanctification.
Yeah.
That's for our sanctification. Supposing our son or daughter is getting married to a non-Christian, okay, right? But to camouflage and to do something that should not be done is not right. But when we don't have that, I feel that, I'm hurt,
Yeah.
that's my sanctification. Okay, so that is very, very clear. Trevor, also there are other practical things, There are some other things brought. Now, you know this, when there are festivities, flags,
Yeah.
flowers, sometimes Bibles, oil lamps.
Sometimes in workers' mass and so on, they bring their instruments, or a mason
They
brings
can
a
be
mason
brought
spoon
for
or something
blessing.
Like that. Yeah, but not as an offertory, right?
No, it's not
It has
symbolic.
no meaning there.
It has nothing is symbolic. Right. Of course, there are very, very rare exceptions. When the Holy Father came along with the gift, the different dioceses had a kind of a symbolic thing to represent the people. Even that, of course, I personally had a lot of reservation, and finally we said, okay, along with the gift for the poor, the identity of the local church can be represented. But there is not a kind of a place for representing people. It is to sacrifice what we have.
Yeah.
This is not a representation. It is very clear. So, things like banners, flags, why do we bring them?
They can't be given to the poor anyway. It has no purpose.
So that's why I said, okay, have the theological framework worked out properly, and then the objectives which flow out of the theology, then you find, okay, many things are not fitting into this frame, not fitting. When you bring flowers, say it's cultural, okay, we have to leave a margin for culture. But what are the types of flowers that we bring? Sometimes, they are not found even in our country.
Sometimes
artificial flowers. Oil for the lamps can be given because it was an accepted gift from the very early times. But then that oil must be used for altar lamps,
Right.
not lamps themselves for the altar.
Already the altar has lamps.
Already the altar has. The Bible we don't bring.
No.
Because the liturgy of the word is by that time over. So we need, my dear friends, my brothers and sisters, this is not a decoration, this is not an entertainment, right? This is not a time to show off, this is not a time to exaggerate, this is not a time to publicize what we do. This is a moment of, discreet, sacrificial sharing of what we have. Therefore, we don't put our names, right? We don't put our names and say, okay, my name and I put 100,000. My name is very big. Why should we have the name? Did that poor widow put her name or somewhere? No. There's nothing like that. This is a sacrifice.
Let not your right hand know what your left hand is doing.
That's exactly our principle. That's exactly our principle. Therefore, the offertory procession must be an experience. Later, when everybody couldn't bring gifts, a representative crowd brought gifts and the others contributed money. That's how the collection went.
I was going to ask you about the collection, Father.
So the collection is part and parcel
of the offertory
procession. That's why it is good to bring the tills or the collection baskets at the end of the offertory procession, if possible.
Should it be before the bread and wine, or?
Yeah, of course, before the bread and wine. Because bread and wine is the highest. That's why it's brought last. So it becomes part of it so that everyone can contribute. That's the original idea.
Sometimes these collections are just brought from the side of the altar, handed over to a altar server.
There are practical difficulties. Sometimes the
Takes
time factor.
yeah, especially in big churches.
If you have big churches, if you have a large crowds, so you have to go around, the ushers must do that, not the altar servers.
No.
No, altar servers are not the proper people to do that. That's not their ministry, right? It's the ministry of the ushers. We sometimes are not even familiar with the ministry of ushers. Ushers must go around and collect, and then it must be properly organized so that it can be well timed in time for the offertory procession.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that they go during the homily and disturb the whole crowd also. So it's a kind of a difficult kind of a predicament where we need to be prudent and also apply our skills to get this organized. But it is part of the offertory procession. And then whatever we bring, we don't place on the altar. Certainly no. There was a time when we brought everything and on the altar vegetables and fruits and flags and lambs and bread and everything there. The altar is not used for that. For such we have a separate credence table. We call it a credence table, or one or two, or even at the foot of the altar. Not on the altar. On the altar we place only the bread and the wine which would be consecrated during the Eucharistic prayer. Right. So, to sum up, this has a history, this has a theology, this has a spirituality, and this is a moment where we lie low, right? It's a quiet moment, it's a sober moment, it's not a moment to be exaggerated, it's not a moment to be unnecessarily prolonged. It's not a moment for people's glorification, it's not a moment for distraction, it's a moment for sacrifice. Right? Sacrifice that we really feel within our hearts. Okay. Now what about this hymn?
Yes, I was going to bring you to that now that the theological side of the aspects of the preparation of gifts we understand now very much. Thank you for that. So this is also accompanied with the offertory hymn sung by the congregation and the choir.
Yeah, now the hymn is to accompany the procession.
Accompany, right.
Otherwise there is no need. But now in the general instructions, we are allowed to have a hymn, especially on weekdays also, even when there is no procession. But the purpose of the hymn is to accompany the procession. The entrance hymn accompanies the entrance procession. The offertory hymn accompanies the offertory procession. Then the gospel acclamation accompanies the gospel procession. Communion hymn accompanies the communion procession. The final hymn accompanies the recessional procession. That's why in the Roman Rite these are called processional hymns. Sometimes we don't have the procession, but we have the hymns. Right? And also, now that we have spoken more or less about the offertory procession, once the offering is handed over, it is better that the hymn ends. Although we may continue, right? We will come to that perhaps in the next episode, because there is a lot of theology to be discussed about the prayers. The prayers used for the preparation of the altar.
There's also the incensing, Father, so maybe the hymns can go on until the incensing is over.
All that is preparation of the gifts on the altar. Now that we are still more or less coming to the end of bringing the gifts, it is better if time could be provided for the prayers to be audibly prayed. Very often what happens is, the hymn continues
till the incensing is over.
Hymn continues, and then you still continue, and the celebrant is waiting, right? And as a result, over a period of time, people don't know about the prayers. The prayers which are said over the bread and over the wine. I remember, Trevor, we went to Rome when we had to prepare for the papal mass in 2015.
Yeah.
And in the first meeting we had with the papal MCs, you know, the first thing he told me, please ensure that your choir doesn't continue to sing once the liturgical action is over. That's the first instruction from the papal MC. He says, please ensure that they stop. Don't allow the Pope to be waiting and waiting and waiting until you finish your singing. Yeah, so it's simple as that. Therefore, this offertory procession must be put and placed in the proper perspective, proper theological, spiritual, pastoral perspective of helping the poor. Probably next time we will discuss the prayers over the other ritual things like washing of the hands, adding water and then incensation, all that can be maybe discussed in the next episode.
Right. Thank you very much, Father, for enlightening us on another important part of the Eucharist, the preparation of the gifts. Lots of aberrations are taking place, and it's mostly due to ignorance. So this kind of catechesis, I'm sure, would help our viewers, our liturgists, and our parish people in the parish who are organizing these things to think again and to put these into practice. Dear viewers, if you are one of those who are preparing the Mass for your parish, for your community, here we have some very enlightening thoughts from Father Cecil Joy today as to how we could theologically ensure that the theology of it is important and that we prepare all these gifts according to the theological perspective for which it is meant for. So I hope you benefited from this fruitful discussion, and don't forget to sponsor Verbum TV in these programs and support their endeavor. They are not funded externally, they don't have advertisements, so they depend on your sponsorship of this program. So please come forward and do sponsor these programs for us. Until we meet again in our next episode, while thanking Father Cecil Joy for another enlightening discussion, I leave you saying, God bless you.